Over the last month, you have developed a good understanding of several metacognition strategies related to dual coding. The focus of this particular session is to provide you with a plethora of ways to record information in a computationally efficient way so that you can choose which works best for you and within particular subjects. Firstly, mind maps. Simple and effective. You have been using mind maps for a long time. The thing to remember when creating mind maps in a computationally efficient way is to limit the number of colours used. 3 is recommended, but 5 is probably your maximum. Use images as well as words. Decide on a word limit and limit the number of branches. Essentially, the key to a successful mind map is simplicity. Secondly, you can create an A to Z. Basically, this is categories for recall. For a topic, write a keyword for each letter and then draw an image or diagram next to each specific term. This is a great quick revision technique. Comparison diagrams, Venn diagrams. So again, this is a traditional method of recording similarities and differences between two concepts or texts. If you're not familiar with them, the overlap between the two circles is where you put the similarities between the two objects of comparison, and then your differences go in the wider circles. Another way of comparing is using a double bubble map, and that's again very similar to a Venn diagram but more sophisticated. So you compare similarities and differences in a more developed and perhaps a more structured way. So if you have more information, this works better because you can fit more into each bubble rather than trying to cram it into a Venn diagram. So in the centre you'll see the similarities between the two objects of comparison, and around the outside are the differences. The fishbone diagram works well for considering cause and effect. So the head of the fish, or the triangle at the end, is the effect or the problem. So for example, if you're looking at World War II, then on each bone, so each thing that comes after it on the little line, that is the contributing factor. So for example, you might say the Treaty of Versailles is one of the contributing factors to World War II, or the causes of World War II. So this may be useful for considering the outcomes of practical experiments in science-based subjects as well. Flashcards are one of the most widely used revision resources in our sixth form, but quite often these flashcards are crammed full of writing. So in order to make them computationally effective, use images instead of words. You can double up the use of these flashcards and use them to play Pictionary as a group revision strategy. So the images on this slide show how a sports studies student might revise barriers to participation. So the two sides of the table represent either side of the flashcard. On the left-hand side you have the image, and on the right-hand side you have the key term or phrase that you need to remember. If you wanted to turn this into a Pictionary game, you would use the key terms and then expect people to draw the image that goes with it. And finally, the memory palace technique. So you might recognise this technique from Sherlock if you ever watched that, where he accesses his mind palace to help him focus on key information. Essentially, a memory palace is a proven technique to help remember key pieces of information by ascribing them to specific places in your memory palace. In the example below, this student has used a kitchen to remember planets, and so each planet is located in a different part of the kitchen. So for example, you've got the table, that is Neptune, the fan, which is Mercury, the fridge, which is Jupiter. So this means when it comes to recall, the student can mentally walk around this kitchen and recall the planets by visiting each station. So the fridge is immediately associated with Jupiter. This works best if it is a space that you are familiar with, so that your brain is not overwhelmed with trying to remember the space itself. You can even create a physical memory palace at home by placing post-its around your room. So there are 7 techniques that you can build into your repertoire. Some of them may work better than others, but it is worth experimenting, if only to add variety to your learning.